Today I'm going to share with you the top 10 mistakes people make with knives and how to prevent them. Over 1,100 people a day in the US are admitted to the emergency room for cuts from pocket knives. Those are just the ones that are reported. That's over 1 a minute. I don't know about the rest of the world as a whole, but in the US, over 36 million households have at least one pocket knife. So with that many injuries literally per minute, there's gotta be a better way to do this, right? Okay, so don't try this at home, but I am going to purposefully dull a knife for demonstration purposes, and I'm also gonna wear cut-resistant gloves so I can safely show you what not to do. And I'm gonna tell you about this nasty scar I got on my hand in a little bit. So buckle up your seatbelts because this may make you wince a little bit. First up is slamming a knife into a stump. This is a nasty one. People do this all the time, and with folding knives, it's just really dangerous. With a folding knife, it's a bad idea to ever do this, even if it has a lock on it, because the strain of actually jamming into a stump or a log can actually cause the lock to fail, and then it'll come closed on your fingers, and that's a really bad thing. A lot of times people will try to do that with a sheath knife as well, and the problem is that when you jam it into a stump like this, your hand can actually slip down over the blade and cut all of your fingers at the same time. Really not cool. So a way to sort of prevent that is to actually just keep your thumb over the top, over the pommel of the handle, and that will help prevent you from slipping when you jam it into a log or a stump or something like that. But in general, it's usually not necessary to do this, so try to refrain from that. One of the most common ones is actually when it comes to folding up a knife, and this happens a lot with Swiss Army knives. A lot of people have stories of this in their childhood, trying to fold up one of these types of knives and having it close up on their fingers. It's a dexterity thing. It just takes a lot of practice. Sometimes people will try to close it with one hand, but then your ring finger can get caught in there. Sometimes people will try to close it like this, and they'll have their thumb or part of the meat of their hand stuck underneath there. There's just a whole lot of ways that this could go bad. The right way to fold up a knife like this is to hold it with the blade facing up, out in front of you, making sure that you have a good grip on the body of the knife like this, with none of your fingers out over this portion of the knife. Then with your other hand, slowly close the knife. There's no other good, safe way to do this. I have a lot of little tiny scars on my hands from getting my fingers caught in Swiss Army knives growing up, so I have a lot of experience in this. I think a lot of you have a lot of stories like this as well. Please share them in the comments below. We'd love to hear about them. When it comes to folding up a knife that has a liner lock, a lock that's inside of the liner of the knife like this, again, the only good way to do this is to have the knife blade facing up, so just put enough pressure on the blade just to get it started, to get it past that locking mechanism, and then close it up. I know for me, most of the time when I get cut, it's when I'm trying to close it one-handed. I see people do this all the time, and I still do it. You just have to be very aware of how dangerous it is. So a lot of people will engage the liner lock and then try to flick the knife closed like that. But just know that if you get distracted and your thumb stays in here and then you try to close it on your leg or something like that, then you're gonna get cut. One of the biggest reasons people get injured with knives is because a knife is too dull. And when a knife is too dull, it requires way too much force to actually cut through something. Which brings me to the sponsor of this video, Wicked Edge. Wicked Edge makes precision knife sharpening systems that are repeatable, they're fast and accurate, and the result is very, very sharp knives in very little time. What I like about them is that they can sharpen small knives like a Swiss Army knife all the way up to a large sheath knife. And they just came out with a new vise option that allows you to sharpen blades from 5/30 seconds all the way up to a 1/4 inch thick. So a lot of these people that are making their own knives that have thicker spines to them, this is probably a good option for you. They're super easy to change out, and it gives you a lot more options. You can use the Wicked Edge system on small blades. All you have to do is just cheat the blade up in the vise a bit more than you would with a larger knife, and that allows the sharpening stones to clear the vise and not hit it. And using their ruler system means that it's going to be accurate and repeatable every single time, which is really awesome. This is the WE66 Obsidian, and it is their flagship model. It's really well designed and manufactured, and it's all manufactured in the United States. It comes with several diamond sharpening stones. There's a 200 grit, a 600 grit, an 800 grit, and a 1000 grit. And then you can also get the strop pack. These are leather strops that have like a micro emulsion that you can put on them. It allows you to get that super, super sharp polished finish on your knives. Once you get the knife set up on the Wicked Edge system for the first time, then you just write down the number that you set the point of the blade to on this scale, just so you remember, and you write down the number on these dials. That way it's super repeatable next time. For a touch-up, you just put it in the vise, dial in the micro adjustment knobs, and you're good to go. Yes, these are premium knife sharpeners, and the price reflects that, but what you get is an amazing tool that creates an insanely sharp and long-lasting blade. I've been sharpening for decades, and this thing rocks. Wicked Edge makes some truly amazing knife sharpeners, and I urge you to check it out, and check out the discount code below. Another mistake people make is using a blade that is just simply too large for the task at hand. The reason why is that a lot of times it's just simple physics, leverage. If you have a long blade and you're trying to do something out here with it, then the blade has a lot of leverage over your hand, and you can't really control the blade in a safe way. Likewise, if you're using it down here, then you just have a lot of blade that you don't need. So use the proper size blade for the job that you're doing. Another one that gets people is sawing through sticks incorrectly. And you know, a lot of these Swiss Army knives, they have saws like this. Some of the multi-tools have saws on them. They're really handy. They're awesome for doing bushcrafting and camping and all this fun stuff. But I've seen so many people grab a stick like this and start sawing really close to their hand. Undoubtedly, what happens is that you start putting too much force into it, and then it slips and it cuts right through your finger right here. A better way to do this is to take the stick and put it behind your knee. Use your leg as a clamp. Then make sure you're several inches away from where you're cutting. Your body is actually gonna act like a vise. Slowly and methodically use the saw to cut into the wood. Don't force it. Just let it take time. It's gonna take time. And the same thing applies to folding up a saw as it does with a knife. Face up is the only way to be. Another one is prying. Knives are really not meant to be pry bars. Pry bars are meant to be pry bars. The reason why it's bad to use a knife like this as a pry bar is that it's just not meant to take the kind of strain that comes from applying force in this direction. Especially with folding knives, if you use them as a pry bar, they're just simply going to break. And when they break, they could cause the knife to slip and end up in your hand or your leg or your arm or something like that. Not cool. Don't use the knife for prying. There's a lot of mini pry bars out on the market. There's even ones built into really nice tools like the Gerber Dual Force. The Gerber Dual Force has a pry bar that is pretty cool. I don't think it would take a whole lot of abuse, but for opening a wooden crate or getting something loose that's jammed, it's just the thing. One of the most common mistakes people make with knives is mishandling. And this applies to cutting towards yourself and when you go to pass an open knife to another person. A good way to safely pass a knife is to make sure, first of all, it's closed if you can close it, or it's in its sheath. And then when you hand it to the person, make sure that they have a firm grip on the knife and they say thank you. And before you let go, make sure you say, you're welcome. In this way, it's very intentional. Both people know exactly what's happening, and there's very little chance for a mishap. If you can't put the knife in a sheath, a great way to pass it is to grab it like this, with your thumb on the top of the blade edge facing away from you on the outside of your body. So there's no chance that that knife is gonna cut you when somebody takes it out of your hand. So with a firm grip on the blade like this, you pass it to the person, they grab onto the handle, they say, thank you, and then you say, you're welcome, and you let go of the blade. That's the right way to pass a sheath knife, whether it's in the sheath or not, or an open pocket knife if you absolutely have to. We could prevent so many injuries if we just did that one thing. Teach your friends how to safely pass a pocket knife, and don't let go of it unless they say, thank you. You can train them. Never try to catch a falling knife. It's as simple as that. Let it hit the ground, try to get out of the way. Do we really need to talk more about that? I've seen a lot of people open plastic packaging by trying to drag the knife towards them. This is really a huge mistake. A lot of people get cut this way. Always work with the knife away from you. If you ever have to, for some reason, work with a blade facing you, then just use the strength of your hand to operate the blade. If you have to use any more force than that, then there's something wrong. Just stop. Change the knife that you're using to a sharper knife, a smaller knife, or change the position of something that you're working on so that it can be facing away from you. Another mistake people make when using knives is they allow themselves to get distracted. I once laid my hand way open. I could see all the way to the bone because I let myself get distracted. I was using a really sharp, brand new carving knife, carving this really sweet turtle out of balsa wood, and I looked up at the clock to see what time it was, and the knife just slipped and went right into my hand. If you feel like you're getting distracted, move to a different location, ask someone to be quiet or move or whatever, but don't let yourself become distracted when working with a knife. Making holes in wood or leather or paper can also lead to injuries with knives. especially folding knives that don't have a lock, because if you start applying pressure and it hinges closed on your fingers, then there you go. So if you're gonna make holes in wood or leather, use the point of a fixed blade knife or the awl on a Swiss Army knife or a multi-tool. Those are much safer options than using like the blade on a folding knife, because it could just fold up on you, and if your fingers are in the way, then game over. Another really common injury is people actually holding the knife with their fingers too close to the blade, whether that's a fixed blade or a folding knife. And if you hold your fingers over the blade like this and you slip, then you could end up cutting your index finger. Obviously not a good idea. So just be mindful of where your hand is placed when you're holding a knife and using it. A lot of knives have finger guards on them, like this one, that actually keep your finger in place. A lot of knives have things called finger choils, which are these little indentations. It's a place where your finger could rest. Now on this one, the blade edge actually extends right up to the finger choil, so in using that, I've actually cut myself. So I prefer to have my hand back here instead of up here. It's just something to be aware of when using your knife. So I'm curious, have you ever cut yourself accidentally with a folding knife or a sheath knife before? If so, please share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it, because we can all learn something from stories like that. So that's all I have. I hope that you are able to put some of that into practice and not become a statistic. Hope you found that useful, or at least entertaining. We'll see you later.